It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, inspire hope, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It is time to wake up the lions. Folks, we have a lion with us today in more ways than one. Love the cause that this gentleman is working towards, everything that he stands for and what he's working on. Very close to my heart. I had the privilege of having this gentleman on one of my other podcasts and was absolutely pleased that he agreed to come on this one and share this message. It's incredibly important, and I think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. So please join me in welcoming to the podcast the founder of Students in Action, Building Pro-Life Leaders, Stuart Kellogg. Stuart, how are you doing, brother?
Doing well, Roy. Thank you. And I'm honored to be asked to be part of your new adventure. It excited me.
Thank you so
A
much for that.
lion. I love it.
I appreciate it. You are one of the lions, brother. We part of what we talk about here are people not only following the faith, but being willing to stand up and talk about it and profess it. And we're not judging anybody. It's not that this person is wrong for not believing. It's simply saying, I do believe, and we're not willing to tone down the God thing anymore. And so when I was putting this together, we hadn't even launched yet when I met you, and I immediately thought, Stuart is exactly the type of person I got to have in this program. You're out there speaking up not only for yourself, but for folks who aren't even here yet to, try and defend themselves. Stuart, tell everybody, who is Stuart Kellogg? What are you about? What are you working on? What brings you here, brother?
Okay, well, who I am, I'm a retired TV guy. I started in the TV business, went to Syracuse University, Newhouse School. Um, did one hockey game with Bob Costas. That's my claim to fame. So, but was in news and weather and on air in Syracuse and in Mobile, Alabama. In fact, as a reporter, that's how I met my wife, Beth. She was a teacher at a local school when I did a story. And then got into the management end of news and television, and then ended up in the general management. I ran for the Hearst Corporation, their ABC station in Jackson, Mississippi. And that's my career path, and retired there almost 10 years ago. My faith walk was we were nominal Christians growing up. We would go, I was part of the youth group, but it was moving from Syracuse, New York to Mobile, Alabama in 1977, which was quite a change. I started hearing people talking about having a relationship with Christ. And what are you talking about? I mean, it was like a different language, Roy. I mean, it's like, I think I shared with you earlier that I was brought up a functional Unitarian. I mean, this idea of that you'd have a relationship with Christ or that the Holy Spirit, that you even talk about that. And it just made sense. And it was just that, okay, I'm not good enough. That was the answer. Yeah, I'm good enough. I was a little raw in the sense that 6 years earlier, my dad had died. And so this idea of death and what it meant. But just cutting through people really who loved and cared and were patient and talking and didn't say, well, how can you not believe, fill in the blank? Instead, saying, here, I was lost and I was found. And on that spring day in 1978, getting on my knees in my apartment and asking Christ to take hold of my life and trusting in him. And so that was the start of that walk. And Rory, as you know, all those walks are never a straight path or smooth. But as when I got to Mississippi, and we're talking 15 years later, really got involved in small groups. And that's when I really started to grow. And then I went to seminary. And after seminary, studying under Chuck Colson, the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. And I've always loved speaking and teaching and talking. And I love talking about not only the faith, but the idea of the Christian worldview is it's not enough just to believe. How does that affect our life? How are we living? Where's the fruit? And that comes if we're living as Christ called us to live. And I think too much now. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but I think too much the focus is let's make that decision for Christ, very important, and we're going to heaven when we die, and that in between stuff, whatever, we'll do the best we can. That's not how I read the Bible. I see Jesus say, no, that's the start. Now let's start walking together. Let's start growing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that has led me to different projects, including this pro-life project.
Yeah. Now, I remember, when I had the opportunity to talk to you last time, that there's quite a story as to how this program came to be and came to fruition and
My lawnmower story.
came to land on your plate, brother. So, like I said, we do have a very different, listenership here on this podcast. Let the folks
Yeah.
here know, how did this end up being Stuart's calling to work on this particular project?
Because this is an example, and I think if you talk to people who are following Christ, most, as I would say, I'm pro-life, but frankly, how much did we really think and dig deep into it? I was ending a project called the Post-COVID Church. I had to run for a couple of years as we went through COVID and out of COVID, how the church was reacting, and I did podcasts and blogs and wrote a book, and it was waning. The interest was waning, and I was going to do my last blog about the recent vote in Ohio. And Ohio, and this is November 2023, was the seventh straight state to vote in abortion rights into the Constitution. Ohio's pretty red. Kansas is very red. Those are two of them. So I was planning the last blog and podcast. And as I was cutting the lawn and planning, you know how we're always thinking about organizing our next project, I sensed the Lord asking me, "What are you doing?" And my answer was, well, Beth and I support the local pregnancy center. I teach on pro-life. I've just given a talk on it, and it's very important. And I sensed an interruption and saying, what are you doing? And it stopped me cold. And I did finish the lawn, but went in and that night applied to be what is called a male advocate, a local pregnancy center. I deal with the young men, almost all young men, almost all unmarried, who come in with the mothers of their babies and they're scared to death. And I'm there to help walk them through and offer even parenting classes. So I applied for that. And then the next day, in talking with a member of a small group who encouraged me to do more. And he said, "You're wrapping up your post-COVID. You love to teach, you love to write, you know how to do the putting things together. So why don't you put a program together for churches, especially for kids, so that they can know more about the pro-life movement and more importantly, know how to defend it." And so that was the start of Students in Action Building Pro-Life Leaders. And I got with our church and we did a pilot program with 8 students. And I put together 5 teaching modules, everything from worldview, how we look at life, abortion and worldview, pro-life and worldview, also looking at the history of the abortion issue, how it's tied life is to our biblical understanding of why life is important, and then getting into how to answer those who have objections to the pro-life position and how to engage and just how to be more, I'd say, stronger in your position because it's more than just it's a baby, which is absolutely true. And the other side will want to take you off that. They want to talk about women's health and choice. It's a baby, it's a baby, it's a baby. But also how to reason. We also it talks about logic. And so it's 5 modules that teach these basics and ideas on how best and how examples of how we connected with the local pregnancy center. So these students were also working with the center, taking a tour, meeting a woman who had an abortion as a teenager, helping them in their fundraising and different efforts. So information and also hands-on work. And the goal is, now that it's been released nationally, is that churches and Christian schools will have this tool Roy, what I'm saying, I'm taking away the excuse. Oh, yes, it's important, but what would we teach? How would we go? Well, here it is. And by the way, it's free. And you go on the website, prolifeleaders.net, everything's there. They don't know who I am. What might I be writing? Well, you can go read all 5 modules and you'll see exactly the experts I'm quoting and the basics. So you'll see that, and then just the PowerPoints and the videos are all there for downloading. And then you order the books through a printer in Dallas, and it's just printing and shipping. Beth and I are getting nothing out of this. We finance this ourselves, but I want to take away the excuse, and I want people to get off their seats and start talking about this issue. Too many people think it's all done. Roe got overturned, especially in the Deep South. Well, why bother? What's the big deal? Well, it's a very big deal. We've, for the last 2 years, crossed the 1 million abortion rate, okay, from 617,000 or so in 2022, over a million in 2023, over a million in 2024. And now that the pills are available anywhere, that number is actually much higher of abortion. So it is a bigger problem than when Roe was overturned, believe it or not. And most of the churches don't believe it. And we got
Right.
to wake them up.
They don't believe it, and part of the reason they don't believe it is because they don't want to. I think, it's too complicated, it's too complex. Now there's responsibility. Somebody might get mad. I love this movement, your story, though, for so many different reasons. The first of which I'll share with you, is that when I was interviewing you the first time on my other podcast, and you told me that lawnmower story, um, it hit me really, really hard. I resonated very strongly with that because I had the exact same thing happen to me, and it's where this podcast itself came from. So, you really did sort of validate my feeling about launching this podcast when I heard your story, because I was sitting here going, all of these men come on here, they're strong on their faith. They come on, my Power Man podcast, and they say, "Is it okay if I talk about God here?" And I kept saying, no one should ever have to ask that question. And as I sat there, I said, what can be done about this? Why aren't people just standing up more? And it was like I literally heard God say to me, what are you doing about it? Like, hey, knucklehead, you have a podcast, man, with thousands of people listening to it. How about you do something about it? So I love that part of your story. It hits me, so strongly. One of the things that hits me about your program, which I'll let you discuss too, and I'll shut up for a minute, but is this is free. I mean, you've taken away all of the barrier to entry on this thing. I mean, they pay for some printing. It's not like you're trying to charge a church $5,000 for a consulting fee or something that they have to worry about paying for. I mean, it's a free program. You're just giving them an outline so they can have the conversation. And yet there's still resistance to having the conversation. So what I want to ask you, the leader of this program, is it why do you think that is?
I think the number one reason, and a friend of mine, Don Lewis, as I sent before this went public, after the pilot, I'd made the changes, and before it went public, probably 2 dozen folks. And I said, here, take, I went, it was live, but I wasn't promoting it. I said, if you look at the link, you'll look at whatever, just give me your feedback. And I did. I got everything from graphic feedback to uh, ways it was presented. So that was terrific. Don's comment was, this is a real commitment. And I wrote back, I said, yes, it is. And then I shared, as I have with others, you know what? Following Christ is a commitment. Let's get over that part.
Right.
So, yes, it's a commitment. So, what I have found is two things. Number one, wow, this is a lot. And so I've adjusted, if you will, as I have talked to folks at churches and groups. I've said, here's an idea. Do what I did. Pick 10 or 12 kids. Just do your own pilot. You do the teacher. You've got the material, and see. Let's see how it goes. And maybe if it really goes well, great. All the kids at your church can do it next time. So that's a pitch. And the other, and I put on the website, and I'll share with you. The email is info@prolifeleaders.net. I'll talk to anybody. I'll help walk through, consult. This is how I did it, or here are our thoughts or ideas. So You're not just out there on loan. I'd be happy to help that. So that is out there as well. So that's number one. Number two, this will shock you. Some church leadership, not nuts about it. Not because they don't check the box. They're a pro-life church, but do we really want to get into this? Or we already have the program set up. How can we make this fit? I mean,
Wow.
so
Just
it's a
wow.
combination of boy, but there's not been. I'm a little disappointed to say there's not been exactly exciting buy-in. But that's what I'm trying to do is talk to. And in fact, very soon in the future, I'm going to be speaking. I'm going to be allowed to make a pitch to all the Southern Baptist pastors in a big county here. Okay. Same thing. I'm taking away the barrier to entry. Here you are. So all I do is share and hopefully get some buy-in. And the hope is then things will pick up and people say, "Hey, this worked. This is worth doing." And it's not hard to do because it's all here for you. But the
So
kids have to be committed to do it.
yeah, so many things about that answer you just gave me. Knock me over. Just leave me with my jaw hanging open. Um, it's like, first of all, do we really want to take that on? Aren't you already? You know, I mean, the
Once a year,
conversations,
maybe.
yeah, at election time. It's like,
No, I was saying January is the
oh,
life month.
oh,
So
right, the anniversary.
I
I
had
got
thought
you.
of yeah, maybe twice a year.
Yeah, right. Because I just sit here and I go, isn't this already part of the basic tenet? I mean, of most of the churches, out there that you value life, right? When you talk about the commitment, I'm curious, and we didn't get into this too much last time. The commitment that they're talking about, it's not a financial commitment necessarily because it's a couple bucks for printing, but is it just that they have to have volunteers to implement the program, or is it the people taking the program? Where are they having the issue with the commitment portion of that?
It depends on where you are, but one is who can lead it. And this is why I'm asking, as I've been doing my follow-up, is there a pro-life champion in your church who's worked at the pregnancy center? Is it so it's a natural
Hmm.
who would be do it? And again, it's a five-part teaching, and you're doing some hands-on outside the church, but you would think a pro-life champion's doing that anyway. That's not a big deal. We'll do it. We'll do a tour. We will do some different projects together. So I don't think a lot have thought through that. Oh yeah, every evangelical church has some pro-life champions on that. And then the other is, well, what about the kids? Will they be? Well, you know what? They're there. Not all of youth ministry should be playing basketball and eating pizza. So yeah, it is. But you know what? I liken it, especially, and I live in Southern Alabama, the Bible Belt. And these kids are in the church, they're in a bubble. Even if they go to public school, they're pretty much in a bubble. And then they leave the bubble and go to the state university, take a couple philosophy courses, start running into folks who have no desire to even talk about Christianity. And as I said, their heads blow up because
Right.
they all they know is, well, I believe because I believe. Well, guess what? As Chuck Colson used to tell us, he said, they'll say, you believe because it's in the Bible. I don't believe in the Bible. So what else you got? You better have something else for the person who doesn't believe in the Bible. And there's lots of things. We
Right.
can go into that if you want, but you've got to be prepared to do that. So that's where it's coming from, I think. But we'll see if it breaks down. Maybe it's because we're in summer. How's that? Maybe that's it.
It's summertime. We'll just blame the heat. All right. Exactly. No, I love that. No, is it strictly churches that you reach out to about this program?
Mostly Christian schools too. I think it's a natural. I've met with a headmaster here just to get some guidance on who to talk to and how to do it. It might qualify for continuing education credit. I hadn't even thought about that. That's great. But again, it's material from not where they normally get the material, and I think that's some of the pastor issue too. You get your material from wherever, and who's this Kellogg guy?
Yeah.
Which is why I have everything on the website. Go look at it. I'm quoting Scott Klusendorf and other pro-life leaders. This isn't me making things up. So I think that's. part of it as well. This idea of it's not ours, but the idea is, hey, wouldn't this work well as part of a Christian school curriculum, and maybe even an after school? I mean, just hey,
Yeah.
give it a try.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Now obviously you're called to do this, and I love the lawnmower story, but I also know that it goes deeper than just having a thought while you're mowing the lawn. So, what is it that has kind of transpired throughout your life, Stuart, that got you into your faith to this degree, got you to this level of commitment, and got you involved in this particular topic, the way that you are?
Well, it's really a step, Rory, and I thought of Dan Parr you had on a couple weeks ago, and he
Yeah.
talked about he, and if it weren't in the 60s, and he alluded to this, if it were in the 80s or 90s, and his mom and dad are told your son, your baby is probably going to be deformed, that abortion would happen. And that was such a moving story. And that I was that close because the doctor said, do it. And I don't have that kind of story, but a little similar. And it came when I was writing this. Peter Singer, do you know that name?
Hmm.
His his title. He's the head of ethics at Princeton University, which is bizarre because Peter Singer is very overt in believing, obviously, abortion at any point. He believes in euthanasia. He believes a baby born who's deformed, it's okay to kill because of the cost to society or to people. I mean, I give the guy credit. He's honest. Okay. He's honest. But I thought of it in the sense, my sister Patty is mentally disabled, unbelievably independent. I'm her guardian, I'm her legal guardian, but she lives alone. She works two jobs. She's unbelievable. Her job is taking care of a quadriplegic woman. And I get emotional talking about this. As far as Peter Singer's concerned, both of them should be gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here is Patty giving all her talent to help this woman live a life. And they're both wonderfully jolly people. They love life. So it's this idea, and this goes, and it's the early part of the teaching. It's Imago Dei, the image of God. We are all made in the image of God. That's why slavery, which had gone on as long as human beings have been around, it was the Christians who stopped it because they said, wait a second, we're all made in the image of God. Now, did people twist the Bible to defend? Yes, but forget that. It's Christians that stopped what had gone on in every culture, every place, the Imago Dei. And just the more it struck me, the more I realized I was numb to the fact. We're talking between 50 and 60 million abortions since Roe. I mean, 50 to 60
Yeah, it's
million.
staggering. Yeah.
You know, and it's such a big number. Isn't that what Stalin says? A big number. You have no, if it's one person, you're emotional because you see one person suffering, but 50, 60 million, and the enormity of it, and just how people need to wake up. And one of the earlier critiques after Roe got overturned was, yeah, you pro-lifers care about the baby until it's born. And there was some truth to that, which is why I work at Women's Care Medical Center. That's happens to be where I work, but every pregnancy center, yes, to help save the life, but also to work with the moms and the dads throughout. Because yes, it's a life that is born, but then what happens afterwards? And that's where the church doesn't do enough, uh, frankly. I'm not saying all churches, but overall, is there enough to be a part of helping those so that because Rory, the data I've seen, the biggest reason for abortions is the idea that I lack support.
Hmm.
I lack support. At least that's the reason given, whether it's financial or all those issues. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of room for life to be more important to the church.
And you work in this, this women's care center, and you get to come in contact with the moms and the potential fathers then.
No,
No?
just the dads.
Just the
It's
dads?
very,
Okay.
very separate. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, yes,
Got it,
yes.
got it. So you're working with the dads on this. Very often this conversation only takes place on one side of the line, and it's a conversation that's only being talked with the lady who's involved, and I know there's a lot of sensitivity to that and so on, but I'm one who believes that the man is involved also, and I'm not going to get into like who should have what say, yada yada, but your life is
Follow the
definitely
science. It takes two. Yes.
exactly right. It's not immaculate conception, I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, we're not having this conversation anyway. But yeah, the fact of the matter is that the men are impacted too, and so you're able to talk with them. What are some of the um, gosh, I don't want to say issues because clearly you know what the issue is when they're in there talking to you. But what are some of the things that you have found in dealing with these young men? In terms of what they want, what they hope for. What are they looking to get out of this whole thing?
And I've done it for a little over a year, but I have a couple of broad themes that come through. Most, and again, we're in the deep South, most have been touched by church, but almost all left it once they became a teenager. Okay.
Okay,
Most were raised in a broken family, not with a married mother. In fact, I can't think of one because we asked just basic information. We're talking to
sure,
them. Three, most love to talk because who sits and listens? And it's amazing. And you've got some very scared folks. But here's the other theme that surprised me because most, and we have a series of questions, and we are trained. It's not just sitting and chatting. We are trained to engage in questions we ask. And one of them is, what are they thinking about the pregnancy? And almost all are excited. Uh, or as one told me recently, it's time for me to put my big boy pants on. Uh, I'm going to take responsibility. Most, when asked about their view on abortion, no, no, and my family's against it. But almost without fail, Rory, and I don't ask, but they'll end, but she's the one pregnant, so it's ultimately up to her. That goes to what you just said.
right.
Wait a second. And and again, part of the scripting, I don't say, wait a second, or say, we're just going through and talking. But that's culture. That's the culture saying you don't have a part of it. And look, part of it is saying this might be a hassle for me, so maybe that would be easier for me. I don't want to be ignorant of that fact,
Sure.
but it's so often they are parroting that it's the woman and that kind of thinking. Now, I'll tell you the other part that I really enjoy doing, if the decision is to have the baby, we offer free parenting classes. And the women have a separate curriculum and a teacher, and we have what's called the Builders Program. And Jason Mann created it, and it is the builders along the idea of men for building. So do you have your blueprint? Do you have a solid foundation? Do you have a cornerstone? It's a wonderful tying in the idea of building with building your family, your relationship, and your role as a father. And that's a six-part course that we teach throughout the pregnancy. And if they go through it, they graduate, they get a toolbox full of tools. And the women get the baby seat and the car seats and the clothes. The guys get a toolbox full of tools. So, and it's a Christ-centered, biblically centered way on how God intends for his image bearers to live and to raise up the next generation.
Yeah, it's got to
Long
be.
answer, but there you
Yeah,
go.
I love it. It's got to be incredibly fulfilling when you can get to that point. When you're helping someone through it and they're trying to solve it like that. So, you mentioned your course, and kind of how your parenting classes and things like that. Students in Action, Building Pro-Life Leaders. This is a course in and of itself. Can you give everybody kind of an idea of what it is, what it consists of, that type of thing, in case there's a church leader out here who, believes like you and I do and is willing to give this a shot?
give it, or at least take a look at it.
Take
Yes.
a look at it. Yeah.
So it's set up, and this is the way we did it for the pilot is, and it was feedback. I thought doing one a month or something, and the youth leaders I consulted with said, no, no, we got to do them. Let's do it over a 5 week period. And I'm glad they did. They were absolutely right. And again, people can do however they want to do it, but I did appreciate that. So we met on a Wednesday night. These students, and there was one sophomore, but the others were juniors and seniors in high school. Instead of going to the youth group, they came to the separate room where I was. And it was from the time they walked in to the time they walked out was an hour. So the actual material was about 35, 45 minutes. So we did a little hello and little updates on things, then it would teach, and then there'd be a Q&A afterwards. There's a question at the end of every chapter that we break into small groups and they talk about. And so then they were out. So it was soup to nuts, an hour, 5 times. One of those modules, as people will see, is with, in our case, the Women's Care Medical Center, because you're doing it in cooperation with them. Jason came from the center and he taught that module. And within, as you'll see on the website, is a lot of information about national dates, important dates in how abortion began. It's fascinating in the 19th century and up through different laws and different connections. For example, folks may not realize that mifepristone, which is the abortion pill, it's a two-pill regimen, that and misoprostol to kill and expel the baby. The same company that produces that, which is the morning after pill,
Mhm.
produced the gas for the Nazi gas chambers. That kind of information, which
Yeah.
is in there. And then Jason in this local module then talked about the local pregnancy center's background and the laws locally. So there's a way to customize the local, but the other four are the topics that we talked about. And then there is the hands-on. My wife Beth was in charge of the hands-on program, so had set up the different things for them to do outside. So we began last August, the first week in August, and we were done at the end of January. And the teaching was done by the middle of September, 5 weeks, but then the projects went on, including one in the church that we did with younger kids, and then some projects outside.
Hmm. All
And then
right.
on the website, prolifeleaders.net, is everything. And they can go through their video. I made some videos so they can just look at it. Here's how it works, some testimonials, and then the modules. The modules are there for them to look at, and then also the PowerPoints and the videos.
Nice. So all they really need to put any of this into practice is a few kids who are willing to take a look at it, and a leader of some kind who is pro-life.
And
Oh, and I lost you there for a minute, and we'll get it back.
yes, the key part is that pro-life champion, one or two or three, who's willing to teach it, and the students, but they've got to know what they're going in for, and that it is going to be a commitment. In fact, if you order the book, the leader guide within it, again, all the teaching materials on the website, but within the book, for example, are the ideas on how to do the hands-on project. Also, there's a application. We made an application. They had to take the time. It's not arduous, but they had to be committed. Why are you interested? Just something quick, just to get a feel for it. So you want them, you don't want to soft sell the commitment. Yeah, it is the 5 hours. Now, hopefully you're connecting when they're at church anyway. So that's the good part. And then yes, they're doing some extra projects, but a lot of them are doing extra projects in the community anyway. So it fits in. In fact, a lot of schools require it, so it fits in to that way as well. But the key is having that commitment.
Nice, nice. Now, whenever somebody's on this program, one of the things I try to ask them is, if they are willing to, or if they have, or if they can, talk to 10 people, go out there and sort of share their story with 10 people to try and build discipleships. And one of the short episodes I did, it's, what if one of those 10 people actually listened? So, it would, double where you are right now. It's like if everybody just did that and only had a 10% success rate, we'd be in great shape. Um, I know that you're out there and you're spreading the word on this. Do you mind me asking, how many churches have you been able to get to, and have you talked to 10 people about this program so far?
I've talked a lot more than 10.
There you go.
And I had the pleasure just a little while ago to be a keynote speaker at the Mississippi Life Summit. So there was an opportunity to talk not only to those who are part of pregnancy centers, but also others who are part of churches. So I've done that. I have been within groups that I'm a part of, including the alumni group of all the folks who've gone through the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. I was in the fourth class, and that was a while ago. So a lot of folks there. So I've been able to share it within there and other groups that I'm a part of, and then one-on-one. And I've gotten, for example, a couple they're going to do it at their church. Well, they had a connection at a church in the other county, and so I've reached out there. The problem is getting folks to call me. So it's sharing it and we're getting traction and people are looking at it, but it's making that next step is the big one. So I love speaking about it, and again, that opportunity coming up to speak to all those Baptist pastors, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at to do because I think the topic is big, and I'm part of a group called the Fellowship of the Alba, and it's a Celtic Christian tradition and a bunch of men, and we meet a couple times a week and talk about things such as what the church needs to do. And T.M. Moore is the head of it. And as he helped me as I was preparing to start the public relations part of this, I loved his analogy. He said, Roe was like D-Day. And he thought back to D-Day 81 years ago, right? And it was the biggest, we were going to German occupied Europe. And thousands, 4,500 were killed, thousands were injured. And what if they had gotten there, they won the battle, and that night said, we made it, we won the battle. Now let's go see what happens. No, they then had 11 months of carnage heading towards Berlin to overthrow Hitler. So his analogy was Roe was D-Day, and what we got is way too many churches sitting on the beach
Hmm.
clapping. We won. Okay, what did we win? We have more abortions now than ever, and it's going to be continuing more. Do you know that there are groups, Roy, Wall Street Journal wrote a story about it. These women in Massachusetts, it's pill packing parties, and they pack abortion pills. You're supposed to have a prescription, but you can get them without them. And they send them to red states. And there's just this jolly sitting around saying, I mean, that's the mindset that we're having to change is wait a second, this is a life, and here's why it's important. So
Right.
it gets me wound up thinking about that. But this is, I think too many people are sitting on the beach.
No, I love the analogy. And I agree with you completely. You know, there's a movement that I've seen, and maybe you've seen it. You work with young people too, of young lions who are kind of stepping up, who are making themselves known within the church, and who are just unapologetic about their faith, including being pro-life. Are you seeing that anywhere? And I'm curious if it's taken hold, in the areas that you're at, or if it's just up north here with me.
Well, one of the lines was once the sonograms, and at our women's care center, we have free sonograms, and you see a life, you see a heartbeat,
Hmm.
and that reality is powerful. And the thinking was that this has been 10 years ago. Well, the younger generation, because they're seeing and they see that it's life, and so they're going to be more pro-life. And there were some indications that way. But when you look at the data on who's in favor, and again, depending on how the question's asked, but it's between 70 and 80% of Americans are in favor of abortion at some point. That's a fact. And those younger generations are even more so. So yes, there are, but it's so much in the water, the cultural water,
Sure.
that it's okay. And again, not talking about what we're talking about, which is a baby.
Right. Well, and so that makes this conversation even more important because it doesn't really matter what law gets passed in any state, or even nationwide. You're going to have people sitting in another state packing boxes. You're going to have somebody else saying, well, that doesn't really apply to me, or I'll just go to a different state and get XYZ done. And so where we really have to be attacking these folks, it seems to me, is that it is a choice. It's a choice for the young men and women to make about whether or not they're going to be together like that in the first place. But then also, if that happens, whether or not they're going to, pursue this, as an option or, stay pro-life. And so it seems like we still have to do something to spread, the word, so that they make the choice the way that you hope they will make the choice. Am I missing the boat on that?
No, not at all. And I think that the key, and this has always been the case, but somehow we thought that the law wouldn't apply here. How many politicians were vote for me, I'll overturn Roe. Boom, boom, boom. Well, guess what? Changing a law is a lot easier than changing hearts. And so, not that the different legal wasn't important, but it was way too much more than changing hearts. It was all about the political.
Hmm.
And now, look, it's a political loser. Just look at the Republican last convention. What happened to the pro-life stand? It's gone.
Right.
It's gone. I mean, so it's John Stonestreet of the Colson Center. I love how he puts it. We went from a pro-choice, pro-life two-party choices to now we're pro-abortion, pro-choice two-party choices. I mean, that's the political facts. So again, changing hearts is a lot harder. But what else are we here for than to be the church? And I don't see enough people, whether it's this issue or others. I think we're too easily just to be entertained or fulfilled and saying, no, we're to do something. I mentioned the Fellowship of the Alba, that the Celtic group. There was a fellow, he's since passed on to see the Lord, John Newtconfin. And by the end, and I want to say he had to be 90, could not leave his chair, could write a little, but that was it. But you know what he told us for the last year and a half of his life, his ministry was he had a landline, so he would answer the robocalls and he would talk to the operators, most of them in India and China, and he'd share the gospel with them. To me, that just see it, I could see that's John's personality. He says, "I ain't gone yet, so I'm going to keep working for you, Lord." So that has been an inspiration to me, and I'll always think of John. That was his mission field.
It's
Was
beautiful.
oversee operators trying to sell them car warranty insurance.
Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. It only takes one. You only have to hit it on one,
There we
right, to
go.
make it worth it. Oh, that's fantastic. Stuart, I love that story. I love all these stories. I love what you're doing, and I love how you're doing it.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on here and talking about this. When I bring up the young lions that are out there, and I do believe that they are out there and that they want to be that way. But um, I think one of the reasons why you see, even the potential young lions kind of fade is because what these young lions today don't have is leadership. They,
Bingo.
yeah, they don't have the older lion who's willing to show them how to do it, show them why they're doing it, and to lead the way and go through the wall first, And so I understand that's a big part of what you're doing. Um, how can you possibly, with what you're doing, attempt to change that?
That's part of the pitch. That's why, for example, getting that pro-life champion to engage,
Mhm.
because they may not engage with the younger folks. And so that is part of it. And just another part, and again, part of this fellowship that I'm a part of, I love that concept of we all have a personal mission field. I think that's a wonderfully, we are, and it's, hey, is it the golf course? Yes, that's there. Is it, whatever you do. And I think, and I'm almost 70, and so, but I'm around too many in the generation who figured, I got my ticket, I'm going to heaven, I've done my deal, and I'm satisfied. And again, John sat in that chair and talked to the to me. Come on, we can do something. And what better way? And I don't think churches do enough of that cross generational because there is some wisdom there. There is something that we can learn. And boy, so many people are overwhelmed and are just alone. And that's one of the things as I counsel with these young folks. A lot of them just want to talk. They want to be heard. So
Yeah.
we can do that, but we got to commit it. And again, yes, it's a commitment, but I don't think following Christ has been sold as a commitment enough. I think it's been soft sold. That's
Yeah.
just my take. I'm not very popular with pastors when I say it, but I don't think it's a good sermon unless someone's been challenged.
No, I
And
love that. I love
so
that. Jesus
call me
Christ
Chris.
is not an easy button.
Yeah.
It's
Guess what? And it's hard, but it's so gratifying. And it makes so much sense. It just makes so much sense. I mean, when you see how God laid out, this is how I want the family to be. A mother and a father raising a child. And then you follow the science and you look at the data for children who are raised in a home without a mother and a father. The data is incontrovertible, whether it's financial, whether it's incarceration rates, education rates, anything. It's so much worse. And we've just kind of blown that out and say, who made that idea? Well, it wasn't because God didn't want us to have freedom and to be happy.
right.
He wanted us to care for the least. And if a culture doesn't care for the least, how can the culture survive? And when you've got all these abortions, is that caring for the least? I say no, and I think it's just not been an issue enough, and it needs to be. And we can do it in a loving way, and we can do it in a caring way, and we can help those who choose life. And I think that's a critical part, and that's where the church needs to stand up as
Right.
well.
Nice.
Sermon over.
Brother, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love what you're doing. I love the reasoning behind it. I love the mission you've been called to, and your passion for it is second to none. I mean, anybody who spends 2 minutes talking to you knows that you truly believe in what you're doing here, and I think that's a huge part of it. So, I wish you nothing but the best,
Thank you.
and all the luck in the world, and man, I'm going to do everything I can. I said it last time. I'll say it again this time to continue to put this out there and see if we can work on some of this together. So,
I
uh,
appreciate it, Roy, and thank you for the opportunity just to share. And again, if folks, prolifeleaders.net, real easy. And that's the website with all the information. So they'll see it there. And then info@prolifeleaders.net. Love to hear from you. And I'll help in any way I can.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for being on the show, Stuart. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks. I hope you got something out of that. I hope you understand what's in front of us. I hope you understand the task. It's time. It is time to wake up the lions. It's time for us to step up and help lead these lions. All right. And more than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and sisters and let them hear you roar. It is time. The world is ready. So are you. Believe it.